points separating the teams. With plenty of time remaining, you imagine that Cork will opt to take a point here. Colin Corkery, scorer of 3 points from frees to date. Really broke Tipperary's hearts, but struggling to get loose against the tight marking down men, and in particular Paul Higgins, but that's point number 4, and the gap is down to 7.
Cork at this stage should be trying to isolate John O'Driscoll in there, and maybe Colin Corkery as well, and for the likes of Paul McGrath to get right out the field and Joe Kavanagh, because whatever chance they have of getting a goal, they must isolate those two backs for down in there, and they're also inclined to foul if they're left on their own. So Cork at this stage are playing into Down's hands by too many of the forwards staying in close to the goal.
And that, of course, just Cork's first score of the second half. It's been far more productive from a Down point of view, with 6 points against 1 to date for the second half. Teddy McCarthy in towards Colin Corkery, and a push in the back by Corkery and Paul Higgins. Neil Collins coming up to kick this one. Cork there in numbers, one more so than Liam Honohan. Straight at DJ Kane, caught it well, however. Now the play opening up for Aidan Farrell, linking up with Gary Mason and coming across with Stephen O'Brien. Mason down injured, down getting a free kick. We're taking a look at that again, Colm.
Well, Aidan Farrell getting this ball and feeding it on to Gary Mason. Stephen O'Brien coming across. I don't know, I couldn't see too much wrong with that. I think he dodged inside him. It's certainly much easier to get frees today than it was a few weeks ago anyway, from the same referee.
I have to say it looked incidental contact there, quite honestly. Stephen was coming across. I don't think he intended to foul. I didn't see a foul. Maybe from another angle we can detect something.
The only thing about Stephen O'Brien, he's been responsible for 3 frees in this second half, which probably all give away points. Gary Mason turned out of the tackle. It looked like going to be shoulder to shoulder, and Stephen O'Brien was set for it.
So now just 21 minutes into the second half, and the Down followers up on Hill 16, wondering whether their team has done enough to see them through for a showdown with either Dublin or Leitrim. And there's the Leitrim manager, John O'Mahony. In 7 days' time, his side will be here for the biggest day in the history of Leitrim football. What an occasion it should be, as Gary Mason's back on his feet again. Gregory McCartan from Ballymartin. In the league, he was kicking so many points, playing at that stage at right half, now very influential in the middle. They've got so many prolific free takers. There's McCartan, there's Mason, there's Carr, and they have an unbeatable look. Down by double scores again.
That's a great option for Down, having both Gregory McCartan and Gary Mason able to kick frees on the left-hand side and Ross Carr on the right.
Won well by Liam Honohan. Stephen O'Brien now trying to open up the Down play. John O'Driscoll going to step out of the way of trouble, caught at the end. Well, Cork at this stage needing goals badly. 13 minutes remaining. Tony Davis trying to gee up Colin Corkery in particular. So will he opt to pop this over the bar? It's well within his range. He's done exactly that. So just 7 points in it. Corkery 5 out of 5 from frees, but I know Cork want to see him make a far greater contribution in the general play, using his physique a bit more perhaps. Great kick out. Nobody was picking up Conor Deegan. In particular, Teddy McCarthy was down to mark him. Now DJ Kane skipping away from Niall Callahan. Once again trying to burst open the Cork defence. Back to Greg Blaney. They can be so decisive and deadly. Will this get over? Not quite. Stopped by John Kearns. Fouled inside there by Aidan Farrell. John Kearns playing in his 33rd championship match. Farrell here, one of the newcomers. That's caught once again by Conor Deegan, but then Tony Davis in quickly to find Paul McGrath. Back to Tony Davis again, showing the heart and the commitment. McGrath once more. Playing very, very deep indeed, leaving just two men inside there. But this is Stephen Calnan. Played here in the All-Ireland Club final. Won a medal that day. The trip, and Barry Breen going back there, acknowledging his mistake. The referee holding up the play to take the name of Barry Breen. Three players having had their names taken.
Stephen Callan again going straight for the goal, and I don't think there was any malicious intent there. I think it was just a simple.
So Colin Corkery gets 6 points.
Cork at this stage have nothing to lose for their midfielders and half-backs to move up the field and try and get a goal.
Colin Corkery there trying to get the Cork crowd up at the canal end to rouse the team a bit more. Though not playing well today, they're still in it, and there's only 6 points separating the teams. Once again, the most influential midfielder on view here, Conor Deegan, takes it out of there to DJ Kane, transferred inside to Gary Mason. Mason, great block by Mark Farr, wasn't quite sure where it went. Greg Blaney in there contesting Mark Farr. Free quickly taken to Teddy McCarthy. Up it goes to Colin Corkery. Now can he get inside the cover there of Paul Higgins for once? John O'Driscoll calling for it inside. 6 points between the teams, Cork in arrears. And again he drops it short into the waiting arms of Neil Collins. Well, he had a number of options, and that was the one the Cork team didn't want to see him take. Mark Farr playing really well this afternoon. The doubters were doubting the wisdom of selecting him, but he's done well. Once again, it's Colin Corkery who's coming out to take this. Just under 10 minutes remaining.
Cork in general have been very slow moving their frees as compared to Down, who kicked them all from the hand.
Good deep one. That comes off the post, but there were players inside there, and it's going to be a free out. Liam Honahan was moving in there, but adjudged to have been in the small rectangle and not the square. My goodness. Honahan is back in midfield. And Tommy Howard there bringing the attention of referee Brian White to that last little incident as we saw Liam Honahan racing out. And John Kelly and Stephen Callan, the players, being talked to. Warning sufficient. Not sure if he got the right guy. Honahan back in midfield. Well taken by James McCartan, known as Wee James. Maybe lacking in inches, but not in determination and commitment. Down it goes towards Mickey Linden. Defended well by Brian Corcoran, the makeshift full-back. To Larry Tompkins. Out it comes with Stephen O'Brien. To Mark O'Connor. Going by DJ Kane. Still down, leading by 6 points. It reaches Paul McGrath. Inside towards Larry Tompkins, having difficulty holding on. DJ got back well. Mark O'Connor now the next one. James McCartan there to challenge him. Mark O'Connor putting the head down. The support if he needs it. He does indeed from Paul McGrath. Back again to Larry Tompkins. 20 metres out. Tight. Space at a premium. Trying to get inside it. Joe Cavan has it stolen away from by Barry Breen of Down. And the Ulster champions lift the siege and cling on to their 6 point lead. A good lead by any yardstick, with just about 7.5 minutes to go. Greg Blaney, time to hold on, to tantalise Defeated inside, needing for Farrell to finish off this match. Oh, it's saved by John Kearns. The game would have been put beyond Cork's reach had that gone in. That's a great save. So Cork cling on. They've been on a life support machine for some time. Conor Deegan once again locating Gary Mason. Inside towards Farrell. And this time Niall Cahalane comes away with it. It's down 113. Cork 10 points. And Conor Deegan wants to lash one high. But he was going for the point and not the fans on Hill 16. Corcoran is now marking Linden, by the way. Cahalane is on Farrell. But John Kearns came to his team's rescue here.
Well, Aidan Farrell should have stuck it away. I suppose that's why he's been punching points earlier in the games. And maybe it's only postponing the inevitable, but Cork still have a chance if they could get a goal. But Down seem to be the more athletic team, and the 50-50 clashes, Down seem to be winning most of them. They seem to be stronger and fitter nearly all over the field.
Cork's preparation of the last couple of weeks hampered, and Billy Morgan will wear there to one of his stars today, Mark Farr. Their preparations hampered by a whole litany of injuries to key players. Down went into the match with a clean bit of health, and they've certainly showed it in this game. And so play will continue with this kick out for Cork. 5.5 minutes left. Down have been the better team. They lead by 6, but it's anybody's match still. Stephen Calnan to Larry Tompkins. Cork needing that goal. Colin Corkery taking many, many steps back to Mark O'Connor. In towards Larry Tompkins. Tom's getting away this time from Paul Higgins. Low shot, and eventually it's Micheál McGill who concedes the 45. Good run forward that time by Tompkins.
Mark O'Connor going forward here again into Larry Tompkins, and I suppose Larry knowing that they really have to get a goal at this stage, but a lot of down backs back there, and it's difficult enough to score without so many players around.
Colin Corkery, this time dropping it short towards Teddy McCarthy. The down backs have been magnificent, none more so than Brian Burns. Burns and McGill and Higgins, stars all really. Brian Corcoran winning it back here. Quite a tussle. Back to Tony Davis. Corcoran. And that time it's Teddy McCarthy trying to hold on to it, pulling down his man as well, and it's going to be a jump ball. The player involved there, Teddy McCarthy and Barry Breen. Gregory McCarty shaping up like he's going to jump in there with Liam Honohan. Honohan takes it well, and Cork get the free. High challenge by McCartan, round the head of Honohan.
Again,
Calnan.
Cork need a goal here. They should be getting that ball in a bit quicker. Colin Corkery going across the kick, it is only wasting a bit of time.
But it seemed there as though Stephen Calnan was ready to take it, and a call from the sideline instructed the number 13 to hit it. And he's put it wide. A third wide of the second half there for Cork, making it 6 in all. And once again, it hasn't been a good afternoon in Croke Park for Colin Corkery. Cork fans, I think, realising that it's only a matter of time now. Down just needing to hold on comfortably. And to win balls like that with Gregory McCartan, once again assertive at midfield, down towards Greg Blaney, now around the inside forward line. With Niall Cahalane, Cahalane conceding the free kick. So the time then ticks away, and it's looking like Down will be here on September the 18th. And certainly the bookmakers at this stage, I think, would be signalling a Down versus Dublin final. That's certainly how it's shaping up at this stage. Rosscar. This time to the left, but when it really mattered earlier on and the game was tight, he was putting them over, and in particular, Gary Mason was putting them over. Just under 2 minutes left. Touchdown by Liam Honahan, expecting somebody from the half-back line to come onto it. Instead, it's James McCartan holding up the point of the attack to Mickey Linden, who'll break many a team's heart. Laying it nicely along the line there for Gregory McCartan. A hit and hope one, but Down will feel at this stage it's almost as good as a score. Down 113, Cork 10 points. Down have scored 7 points in the second half against 3 for Cork. Mark O'Connor winning the free, the foul by James McCartan. James limping back to do his piece of defending. Mark O'Connor tried to pick out Stephen O'Brien, who's now playing on the half-forward line. Barry Breen, he's made that transition from midfield to centre-half-back quite superbly, and with DJ Kane there to assist, and James McCartan to forage. They've got a nice unity about them. And Mickey Linden here now, inside towards DJ Kane. He'll do well to contain that, runs on to John Kearns instead. Now Niall Cahalane. And some of the Cork fans making their way off, but their team is back defending and facing some further pressure from Rosscar. Mark Farr getting it clear to Tony Davis. Paul McGrath now. Joe Kavanagh. The inside forward line, which really hasn't functioned well today. And this time it's once again Brian Burns emerging with possession, but he stepped out over the end line to concede a second 45 to Cork. Overall, Down's game plan worked very well. They looked the fitter team, they created space in vital places and took their scores.
Yes, and the Cork forward line in general had been a bit of a flop.
Late in the match, and that's where once again Brian Burns comes out, relieving some of the blushes of Neil Collins, who was under some incessant pressure, and Paul Higgins got a clap on the head back there, but they're fighting on. We're in injury time. And Down, who are appearing in their 12th semi-final, are about to win their 5th. Gregory McCartan now, well into injury time. Paul Higgins. Higgins across towards Gary Mason. Recovered back there well by Mark Farr. The referee having a look at his watch. Tony Davis playing it out to Liam Honahan. Honahan, who emerged as quite a star, and people will wonder why he wasn't started. Mark O'Connor played most of the match at right half. Still in an attacking position. Back to Colin Corkery. And Cork's top scorer, Colin Corkery, with 7 points to his credit, but that one I think the first from play. So 5 points separating the teams. But I think the Cork team, and certainly the Cork fans of the Canal End, will appreciate that Down have been the better team throughout this match. They've emphasised it in the second half. Touchdown here, Teddy McCarthy. Cork get the free kick. Well, Cork will want to put a better gloss on the final score, but they don't have the chance because Down has won, and Down are through to the All-Ireland final. What seemed on the cards and inevitable for a long time in this match has finally come to pass. Aidan Farrell got a goal in the first half, and he might have had 3 overall. And Gary Mason kicked 6 points, 5 of them coming from frees. Rosscar also a hero. But overall, a terrific Down performance. Pete McGrath and his team will be well pleased to have emerged to face into the All-Ireland final with a winning score by 5 points. Down 113, Cork 11 points.
Yes, a brave and battling performance by Cork in that match, but no doubt about the result whatsoever. Down deservingly into the All-Ireland final to face either Dublin or Leitrim in September. We will have more reaction from the panel. That will be after this commercial break. Stay with us for that. That's the scene then at Croke Park as the Down supporters celebrate their appearance in the All-Ireland final. Well, the boys most definitely back in town. Down, the winners of the All-Ireland in 1991, of course, setting up that great sequence of Ulster teams getting through to the All-Ireland final, and today creating a little bit of history, because this is the first time that Ulster teams have appeared in the All-Ireland final on 4 consecutive years. Down themselves, of course, starting that run, a run that also included Donegal and last year Derry. Well, those supporters obviously delighted with today's performance, and particularly when you take into account that after winning that 1991 All-Ireland final, well then Down went into the doldrums for a year or two and were out of the picture in Ulster. So let's recap on what's happened here at Croke Park today. Down, as you've just seen, have won their place into the All-Ireland final. A little bit earlier on in the afternoon, the Kerry Miners also won a place into the All-Ireland final. They beating Armagh on a scoreline of 2-10 to 9 points. They'll meet the winners of next week's semi-final, that between Dublin and Galway. The first match here at Croke Park today was a hurling game. That was the Miners semi-final between Cork and Down. Well, some consolation for Cork supporters there, winning that one, winning it very well in the end on a scoreline of 2-20 to 2-1. They meet Galway in the All-Ireland hurling final minor on September the 4th. Let me go back again to our panel. We still have Paddy Collins with us, and also Enda Gormley of Derry. Paddy, there really wasn't much doubt about it, I suppose. It was, I won't say exactly all over at half-time, but the writing was on the wall, let's say.
Yeah, well, at half-time, it seemed Cork were always chasing the game for the greater part of the first half, and the second half was actually no contest, apart from the early stages when Cork threatened and didn't score, and then Down had some 2 or 3 points from frees. When you realise that Cork, I think, didn't score from play until the 36th minute, I think you can understand that they were never really in the game with a chance.
I think one of the things Enda that pointed up the difficulties that Cork were in straight after the second half. Now, there were just 2 points down at half-time, but straight in the second half, they gave away 4 frees on the trot, one of them a 45. And that suddenly put a big gap in the scoreboard then.
That's right. Cork had the first 2 scoring opportunities of the second half, and they missed them. And straight after Down went down, and Gary Mason scored 3 great frees, and Ross Carrigan one. And that 6-point gap left, you always felt that Cork were chasing the game, and they seemed to drop the heads very early in the second half. There were several balls which Down won, which should have been Cork balls, but the Down hunger, which I think was very eminent right throughout the game. The Down were more hungry. You'd have seen the whole attitude of the 2 teams coming onto the pitch. Even you'd have noticed it through the crowds. The Down people are here, are hungry. It's been all talked about right throughout the north all week. Yes. Whereas the attitude seemed to be coming out of Cork is that it was all very low key, and I think that ended up being the attitude of the players on the pitch. You know, Cork didn't dig in there the way that you have to at this stage.
Yeah, we made this point several times to ourselves here when we were talking about it, Paddy. A ball that would be played in to space by a Cork player. Instead of his colleague getting it, a Down player would come from 5 yards behind to win it.
Yeah. Down had this hunger. There's a steely type of determination about their play that was absent from Cork. Cork just didn't seem to approach the game with the right attitude. Perhaps the injury worries maybe didn't have them as well prepared. But Down, although well on top in the second half, again they only scored 1 point from play in the second half, to the best of my recollection, Aidan Farrell, and even that was a box point, so they didn't kick a point from play in the second half. So that's probably something Peter McGrath and his management team will look at for the next day, you know.
Of course, Paddy, in actual fact, one of the few points that they scored from play, maybe as far as I can remember, perhaps the only one in the second half, was Aidan Farrell's point. But we'll have a look at this. This, though, showed the kind of trouble that Cork were in, because Down were breathtaking in the move.
They were, and Mickey Linden had a part to play in this, as he had in most of the scores in the first half. He combined quite well with Aidan Farrell, who's a comparative newcomer, would be new to the scene in Croke Park. And Aidan, again, his second box point, you know.
It was all looking so easy for Down, really, at that stage.
Absolutely. I don't think, after the initial few minutes, as Enda said, when Cork had a couple of opportunities to reduce the leeway, I don't think we ever saw Cork in the game with a realistic chance.
I suppose in some small way, Paddy, Cork today got some small feeling of what Mayo went through last year when they gave Mayo a huge drubbing.
That's right, yeah. I think it was very disappointing for the Cork followers, and they just didn't sparkle today.
However, and let's put it in context, we still will have to make the point about the difficulties that Cork had going into the match. And then at an early stage, there was this clash of heads between Anthony Davis and Dan Cullity, who had to go off, which didn't help them.
That's right, that certainly did make a difference. And then they lost Shea Fahy on top of that.
Yeah.
Cork certainly have had their bad luck with injuries, whereas Down have had a clear run all year. They seem to have very few injuries. But at the same time, you get these breaks, and you have to make the most of them, you know. The good thing about Down is that some of their newer players, like Aidan Farr in particular, I think he scored a goal and 2 points, set up several other scores. I don't think he kicked the ball, actually. And Micheál McGill, two of the newcomers from the 91 team, have been very, very good today, and that's something. They're not looking to the same old heads all the time. James McCartan and Greg Blaney were a lot quieter than they've been to many days, and they're men for the big day. And you know, it's great to Down that they can look to different players on different occasions.
That's always obviously a huge and important factor in any team.
That's right. If you've only one or two danger men, with the standard of coaching nowadays and the amount of preparations from the teams, you can work your game to try and take two danger men out of it. But if you have 6 danger forwards and maybe a couple of midfielders, like Conor Deegan's very good, Gregory McCartan come forward and took a couple of points, it's very hard to work with this, you know, especially the game down play with the early ball in the full forward line.
By contrast, Paddy, looking at it from a Cork point of view, players like Colin Corkery would be disappointed with the way that he played today. Paul McGrath, maybe Joe Kavanagh also to some degree. You know, they really didn't turn it on.
No, they didn't. When you consider that the forward line would have had Colin Corkery, Paul McGrath, Joe Kavanagh, John O'Driscoll, and they couldn't score from play up to the 36th minute. Mm-hmm. You know, that is an indictment of the... While credit must go to the down defence for their tight marking, but you would expect that players of that calibre would have been able to extricate themselves somewhat earlier and got scores from play, you know. I think Down also have a very plus factor in the favour. They have some excellent free takers from either side of the field, as was mentioned in the commentary. Ross Carr, Gary Mason, and even I think Gregory McCartan took a hand in the free taker, and it was excellent.
Well, we saw into how the story unfolded, but obviously the early exchanges in any match can set a pattern for the way the game is going to go. The first big break of the match came when Down got their goal, and this was a very important score in that first half exchange.
That's right. I think Down had two very similar chances. Even Farrell had a good chance before this, and came from Mickey Linton. Somebody said earlier, I think this is very like the Down goal in 1981 final, the ball over the top, the defence. Yep. Mickey Linton has incredible speed, wants to be one of the fastest players in Ireland. He was very quick onto it, and Farrell followed up into a great position. He seems to get into coast into these great positions, and it made it all easy. Or Mickey Linton's passing made it easy for him.
There was much talk before the match about Mickey Linden and about Greg Blaney, the influence that they would have on the game. Certainly from Mickey Linden's point of view, he delivered on every bit of the promise that was there. That's
right. Mickey Linden's an incredible player. He's probably one of the best players in Ireland this year, if not many a year. And if he gets early ball into space, there's very little a defender can do, because he has great ball control. He's good at winning the ball, tremendous pace, and he has 2 good feet. You know, so it's very hard to work with somebody like that.
It's easy on a day like today when everything's been going well for Down. They've played very impressively to look beyond maybe some of the faults there. Anything that you saw in their play that you would worry about from Down in the All-Ireland final?
I thought one of the things that Down normally do well is give the early ball in the full forward line. There was periods in the game when they didn't do that, you know, when they tried to overcarry it around the middle of the field. I'm sure that's something to work on. Obviously, as Paddy said earlier, they're scoring from play. They're going to have to work on that, you know, taking the shot earlier. They must have scored well over half their scores from frees, and then they got 1-2 from the fist. So there was very few points kicked from play, and that's something they can work on. But at the same time, the type of game they play where their half forward line lie very deep and are great tackling, I think that's one of the other things that got to be said with this Down team. Yeah. Down's half forward line are tremendous tacklers, and they make the job a lot easier for the Down defence, and that's something possibly a way you could put down the performance of some of the poor performance of some of the Cork Packers. You know, they're getting very poor quality ball.
Paddy, Paddy, briefly before we go, let's turn our attention to next Sunday, the meeting of Dublin and Leitrim. Of course, the Leitrim players here watching this today, it's going to be a big occasion for them. An occasion too much for them, perhaps, as many people feel?
Well, it's a great occasion for Leitrim. It's a tremendous achievement for a county of Leitrim's size to get to the All-Ireland semi-final. I think they're aware of the task that confronts them. Like, you couldn't ask for a stiffer task than to come to Croke Park for the first time and play Dublin in an All-Ireland semi-final. And I suppose most of the pundits would have Dublin as strong favourites, but I'd hope that Leitrim would perhaps perform very creditably, and they might have a surprise or two in store. Like.
Well, we look forward to it, Paddy. Who knows, indeed. Maybe strike a blow for Connacht football. Paddy Collins and the Gormley, thank you very much for joining us in the panel. There we must leave it, but of course we remind you that the Athletics and the European Championships in Helsinki continues. RTE's coverage of that continues throughout the rest of the evening, and the Sunday game will be back at 8 o'clock, and we'll have highlights of today's match. Also, our man of the match selection. That's the Sunday game, Network 2, 8 o'clock. Join me for that.
Very hungry, and they seem to be physically very, very strong and aggressive, and a little bit arrogant as well in their play, which a team at that level sort of needs to be. But the speed and strength certainly were all with Down today. And I think we can take a few of the situations which developed. They showed the speed of Down players. Here, Mickey Linden out in the wing. Niall Callahan doing well to keep him outside, but the vision as well. Player outside, good running off the ball by Aidan Farrell for the first point, and no heroics. Here's a good example of the Down free takers. Everyone thinking that Ross Carr was going to kick the free. Then it's kicked by Gregory McCartan. Mickey Linden had made the run and just turns and belts it over the bar. The amount of free takers they have is an important part of their weaponry as well. Again, Aidan Farrell winning possession very well. And this shows the great handling of the Down forwards. Very short, sharp, incisive hand passes. Gets a player loose. Conor Deegan, who had a magnificent match today, kicks a great point. But the Down forwards there, even though they had no space, under a lot of pressure, they're used to the ball in tight situations, especially McCartan and Blaney is magnificent. They rarely send a pass astray, even in the tightest of situations.
If Cork needed their team to be firing on all cylinders today, the one thing they didn't need, Colin, was the kind of incident that took place roughly 10 minutes into the game, the clash of heads. Now, we're going to have a look at that in a moment. By the way, several callers, in fact, have gotten through to say that if a player gets injured, the blood should be totally cleaned off before the player is allowed to play on. This should have happened today with the two Cork players. This is another factor, of course, when we look at this incident, that people are concerned now about, well, I suppose AIDS is the thing that comes to mind, because in other sports, it's very much a factor now with blood injuries.
Yeah, I think in soccer you can't play on with blood, and I think it'd be no harm to bring it into GAA as well. I think what happened today now was a very, very ugly thing. Here we have Danny Cullity going up for the ball, comes down, gets a little bit of a shove maybe in the back, goes straight into Tony Davis, and you know, it was a desperate clash, and there was more blood flowing there than you'd see in the Muslims' abattoir maybe. Certainly more than at a turf club inquiry. So, and Danny Cullity then having to go off, he was a huge loss to Cork, yes, because even though he hadn't been playing particularly well at the time, you know, he's been one of their best players in this year's championship. Shea Fahy wasn't going well, and then you had a host of other players injured as well. So, like, the injury of Cullity, even though Liam Honohan, in fairness to him, did quite well when he came on, but Cullity was a big loss, and Tony Davis took him a while to get back, even though he played well the second half. There was a few little things happened where he was caught a bit for the rest of the first half, and you know, I don't see how he really could have been in a condition to continue after that. He's a very brave man to go on with that amount of blood and that sort of an injury.
So if any team needed a break in the first half in terms of getting the ball in the back of the net, it was Cork. But in fact, of course, the goal opportunity came to Down.
Yes, and again, their standard play, a long ball from Barry Breen, to nobody in particular, but if you get it up there and you have a fella with the speed of Mickey Linden in behind, out and flicked in very neatly. Again, the important thing is the long ball up, use the speed of Linden, and then there's always good support from the rest of the forward line. So Aidan Farrell doing very well there. All his scores today, a goal and 2 points, I think they were all set up by Linden, and they were all punched. So again, using his head.
Cork were still only 2 points down at half-time, but the real killer for them then was what happened in the first 10-minute periods or so in the second half.
Yeah, Cork had done particularly well, I think, in the last quarter or the last half of the first half to get back into a game that looked to be going right away from them. And then they came out at the start of the second half. They're only 2 points behind, and they had a couple of great chances to level it or go in front. And Liam Honohan there shooting badly wide.
Miss, yeah.
Very bad miss, that one. Then Larry Tompkins gets another chance, and Larry normally would put those sort of ones over, again curls wide. So in the space of a few minutes, Cork had a couple of great chances of levelling the game. It went straight down the field, and here we have Gary Mason in possession, give to Greg Blaney. A very silly foul here by Stephen O'Brien, and I think the Cork backs give away a few very stupid frees in that second half. And when you have somebody like Gary Mason, like, that's the same as committing football suicide, because I think he had 4 shots at goal from frees and he kicked the 4 of them over. Then you had Gregory McCartan who was able to kick them as well, and you had Ross Carr. So the Cork backs giving away easy frees then at that stage. They just let Down sort of go away from them 5, 6, 7, 8 points. And Down, the one thing about them, they were getting no score from play. They only got 1 point from play during the second half, which must be a source of worry to them. So they were relying on getting those easy frees.
OK, well, in any event, we will see Down again, obviously, in the Championship. Not so Cork, and maybe not so several of the Cork players again in Championship football. Sean Moynihan from Cork now, he phoned in to say that the problem is that the selectors need to revamp the team. They've been using the same players for the last 7 or 8 years, when the quality of young players coming through is excellent. Your thoughts on that?
Well, if you looked at last year's All-Ireland final, and you would say that Cork probably had the best emerging talent in the likes of Joe Kavanagh and Colin Corkery, and then you had Stephen Callanan coming along today. And if you, as I said at the beginning of the year, I thought that Cork looked to be one of the better teams for this year's All-Ireland, and if their preparations for this game hadn't been disrupted so much, I'm sure they would have given a better performance. But really and truly, you need to be on the ground in Cork at club matches and seeing what's going on to see who's the real players. Obviously, I'm sure there's quite a few of them will drop out at this stage, and we will see quite a different Cork team back again.
The impression I got from Billy Morgan talking to him during the week, Colin, is that this would be the end for him. The end of the Championship would be the end of his reign as manager. So there could be a new era, and an era finishing in Cork football now.
Yes, well, to manage an inter-county team anymore is a full-time job. It's a tremendous commitment. I have the height of respect for anybody who takes on inter-county management, because a player can go and train and he goes home, but like managers, they're watching videos, they're picking teams, they're going around to club matches. The amount of time is incredible. Sure. So, you know, Billy Morgan is after doing it for several years now. He's had a lot of success with Cork, so he can walk away from the job and make no apologies to anyone.
You keep that in mind now. You're having an easy life so far. Don't mess it up. Colin, your man of the match selection from this one.
Well, again, I suppose it's easy to say it's difficult to pick a man of the match, and in this particular case, or it's difficult to pick a man of the match. In this case, I think I was very impressed with the Down full back line today. They have sort of been much maligned in the press, I suppose, and they all stood up to their task very, very well. And Barry Breen was very good at centre half back. I thought Conor Deegan had an absolutely excellent match at midfield, but maybe I'm a little biased in favour of corner forwards, but I thought a lot of the Down play again went through Mickey Linden in the corner today, and again he was out showing for every one of the balls. He won a lot of possession, he set up a lot of scores, won frees, and I think that at the way he's playing at the moment, he's more or less uncontrollable. I think this is one of the best examples of what he's doing. Again, a great ball there from Conor Deegan into that space, and of course this is the secret of Down's play, that space is left there for Linden. He plays right across the full forward line, beats Niall Callahan for pace, and leaves an easy point for Aidan Farrell. So whoever's going to beat Down in the final, if they're not able to mark Mickey Linden a bit better than, and I haven't seen anybody in this year's Championship who has been fit to mark him. But I think the secret of the Down play is that half-forward line. They are so far out the field, it gives Linden great space. And they're putting the ball into that space. So I think some team are going to be trying to devise a plan where they're going to get some player to drop back in there.
Yeah, well, that's a plan that will fall to either Leitrim, of course, or Dublin, whichever has the opportunity to do so. Colin, thank you very much for the moment. But Cork fans, well, they didn't walk away empty-handed from Croke Park. Their minor hurlers defeated Down to earn a place in next month's final, while Kerry's minor footballers were too strong for Armagh.